All right, let's go. Let's talk about the different types of chorus like effects that you can get and what chorus is for and what types of things you can do with it. So in general, I like to think of chorus as being kind of like the Photoshop blur effect of audio. You can think of it as taking your sound and smearing it just to make it a little bit more blurry and more in the background, kind of away from the listener's face, if you'd like to think of it that way. Especially if you're wearing headphones, it really does come across that way. So I have here a dry saw wave from Serum, just with random phase. Now, as soon as we introduce the just standard settings on the chorus, it kind of gives us that effect that unison would give. Right? That type of thing. So the way that I would like you to think about chorus is think about it as literally just being a reverb. So if we take out the late reflections for our reverb, I'm actually going to do this with Valhalla instead because I use that a lot more. But you can do this with literally any reverb. I'm just very used to the workflow with this one, so I'm going to do it this way instead. So I would like you to think of it like you're adding this type of space over your sound. And you're just making it so that it's not as in the face of the listener. Versus so with that in mind, as soon as you start thinking about chorus as this type of blur effect, it'll completely change how you mix. If you want to learn how your chorus works, mono it, listen to what it does to your dry signal when it's mixed in, compared to it'll give you a lot of different textures. So with that in mind, I want you to think of chorus in 3 different settings, 3 different types that I want to leave with you for your mixing purposes, and not really your sound design purposes. But we'll get back to that in a second. So if you have very high amount, very low rate, then you get what we've been listening to this whole time. The very 80s-esque, old school type of chorus effect. It'll give you that really warm, almost like Juno-y sound. And then when you start messing around and going into like the higher categories of rate, then you kind of get this kind of mess of sound. Now, where this becomes handy is when you start pulling back the amount. Because now, you're still getting width, you're still getting that blur effect, but now it's just really subdued, and it still sounds like the original sound. But now the nice thing is that you can bring this in only a little bit, and it'll blur your sound just like very lightly, kind of like a super light Gaussian blur over your sound. Now, as soon as you start messing with this more, then you can kind of create this effect of like comb filtering. So let's go on a tangent real quick. With choruses, they tend to sound exactly like comb filters, and that's because that's how they're designed. Choruses are just a bunch of comb filters in kind of in series or parallel. So you have basically a bunch of comb filters, and then they're all just moving with their cutoff. So you hear that sound? That's the exact same sound that you're going to get from this chorus when you push the feedback. Do you hear? It really sounds like you're just pushing this panning knob to the side and then moving the cutoff. There you are. There's your chorus sound. And now you can just bring in the mix. So it's literally just a comb filter with, or maybe two comb filters because it's different on left and right. But it's literally just that. It's just comb filtering at its bare minimum effect. Sometimes it might be a flanger effect, but usually it's comb filtering. Now, you might be wondering, hey, what does this little button do right here? So by default, you might hear that it kind of sounds like saw waves when you try and play with your comb filters. Oh, that kind of sounds like a saw, but it sounds like really high and weird and resonant. But if we go to the opposite and we just go like, hey, what does a square sound like? Just again. And then we go, okay, so that's what a square sounds like. So what does it sound like when we use this minus setting? Oh, wow, that kind of sounds like a square, doesn't it? So the difference between the two is that the positive type comb filter will use all the even harmonics. The other type of comb filter that you get will use all of the odd harmonics. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, 9, 11, etc. And what that gives us is different types of textures to play with for our types of chorus and the types of effects that we want to grab from that. So we can throw this LFO on here. We can have this resonant be quite high, and then we can play with the pan a little bit, and then we get... And that's kind of like the chorus effect. So that exact same effect that you hear in Serum, you can do with just the chorus here. So the reason that I pointed you earlier to playing with the different types of modes, this classic mode is the exact same as using the comb filter in Serum with the pan. The only difference is that the pan is also modulated to the opposite direction, and this amount is then controlled with the macro. So it would be the same as just throwing this macro on here. Without the other one. So yeah, exact same. That's my point that I want to make here. The classic chorus mode is just like that. Now, where the difference comes in is when you try and introduce the ensemble. The ensemble uses 3 comb filters instead of 2. So usually the center one won't pan around, depending on the type of chorus that you're using, but it gives you that type of texture. Now, with all of that being said, let's go into some presets and things that I think that you should try first when you try and mix things in. So I'm a big fan of having the amount high, rate low, and then mixing the dry wet in. Gives you the very 80s sound. The other effect that you can do is low amount, high rate. This kind of sounds like it's going on the whole time, but a lot of times when you mix this in really nicely, it will sound like the exact same sound, but just wider. So that is the two types of mixing types that I want you to keep in mind when you're throwing sounds around in a chorus. High amount, low rate, low amount, high rate, and then play with the feedback and the dry wet. This is like most of the time I would switch between these two settings. And then when you want to get more fine-tuned after you've trained your ears for these two types, then you can try and move the rate around, try and move the amount around. Then you can kind of explore a little bit more. But this is the two extremes that I want you to keep in mind. So for the sound design people out there, if you want to play with chorus and you want to make something really nice for A, your mixing, and B, for just width, something that Virtual Right shouted out on his Twitch stream, which was really cool, is you grab an LFO, put that on the mix, and then absolutely thwack your chorus so that it's just like messing everything up. And then you get that mess of noise. It literally sounds like kind of like distorted white noise with the original sound, which can be really nice on bass noises. So the idea behind this is you keep your beginning of your sound quite clean. It's quite punchy and clean. And then the tail end of your sound is also quite clean. That's kind of the idea that you want to keep in mind when you're using this trick. You can use this trick on not just chorus, but flanger, phaser, and also other types of things like delays and reverbs. They're great for this type of stuff. Anything that does delay-based sounds. So reverb, delay, phaser, flanger, chorus. You get a few other types, like the hyper one is also quite good. It's also just a type of almost like a chorus, but not quite. So yeah, all of these are very great to use for this trick. But I'll go over that in another video. And yeah, that's kind of it for this. The other thing that you can do with choruses for sound design is put the rate all the way down, put the delays all the way down, maybe map your delays to one macro so they're the same. Your depth you can then also pull all the way down. And now this becomes a flanger filter. Let's just remove that one. So you can do stuff like that. It's quite fun. And if you take away the high pass, it kind of sounds like it's playing one note extra, like just in the center somewhere, in between all these notes. It's kind of like playing, where is it? Maybe this note. It kind of sounded like we landed on that note for it. Yeah, so you can do really lots of things with chorus. I'm not gonna keep hammering on this idea the whole time, but I want to leave you with just those few tips. The feedback type here changes your positive and minus. feedback adds just resonance. The amount changes the amount of the sound. In other words, the distance in which it will travel. In other words, your cutoff. The rate changes between how fast your cutoff is moving. And yeah, that's kind of it. Remember these two things though: high amount, low rate, low amount, high rate, and you'll be good. And then just play with your dry wet, and you'll be able to blur sounds into the background like a monster. It'll be great. It's really fantastic. It's one of my favorite effects, and I hope that this video helps. I know it's kind of rambly. I did like 3 versions of this video because I tried and get as much information into this and tips into this as I could. But I hope this helps. I think this is going to be the last version of it. So yeah, hope you have a wonderful day, and this is Lightshard signing off.